Trucker Dump, episode 198. Well, today we're going to cover my long-lost job, what happened, who's at fault, and of course, this is all just my opinion. Let's get after it.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey, Trucker Dumpers, Todd McCann here. I've been driving a truck for 27 years. 22 of those was with my wife. I've been doing this podcast for 11 years. Well, 12 if you count the big hiatus I just had. I've got 2 trucking ebooks, How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job and Trucking Life. Good God, it's been so long since I've podcasted, I almost forgot the names of the books. Hey, those books used to be for sale, but I'm now offering them for free. Just email me, truckerdump@gmail.com, and I'll send you a link to the audio version of that, which is 9.25 hours long. That's only of Trucking Life. The how-to book does not have an audio book attached to it. But yeah, if you want to waste 9.25 hours of your life, have at it. No, actually, it's a pretty good resource from what I've heard for new truckers. So go ahead, get that for free. And I'll also send you the audiobooks, or not the audiobooks, the ebook versions for both Kindle and something you can listen to on anything. So just email me, truckerdump@gmail.com. So what do we have in store for today? Well, I guess I should start where it all ended. So my frame of mind at the time was not in a great place. First at work, I still love the job, but everything was kind of sliding downhill. Negotiations, this new thing was not going well. There was some stress at work. I had gotten into it with a couple of drivers who were, it was a union steward issue. And 2 of these drivers that I always got along with now hated my guts, which I had never had that happen before in my life. But that's what happens when you call people out on their BS. And you stick to your guns and they don't like it. But regardless, I'm not going to go into that because I will never get off of it. But another thing that was going on in our life was Hammy, our dearly beloved but very mean old cat, had been having a lot of health issues for a long time. He had been puking around the house and it was very annoying, but we didn't really know what was going on. We were spending lots of money at the vet trying to figure it out because, hey, we don't have kids. We spend money on animals and if you got an animal, you treat them like a member of the family. So, he was going to the vet a lot, hating our guts for it, but we were trying to figure out what was going on with him. And they finally figured out that he had lymphoma of the stomach and spleen. I believe it was lymphoma, but that was what was causing him to not eat well and to puke up pretty much everything he got. He was just sickly. He was declining slowly and we could see the end. He was 18 years old and we had him for a long time. Now I was on the road a lot, so I was close to him, but not like the evil overlord. I mean, these 2 were attached to the hip. I could watch them communicate by looking at each other, signaling, just talking to each other, he would meow at her or whatever in a certain way. And she would know exactly what he wanted and take him to the window or give him food or give him some pets or whatever. But, it was a very tight relationship. I mean, think about it. She didn't have kids, we didn't have kids. So, that was her baby and they were together all the time. And there towards the end, she was not working from home or she was not working out of the home. So, it's like they were together all the time. And it became inevitable that we were going to have to put him down. So we were already going through this. And eventually, just before I started my new job, we did have to put him down. It was on my birthday or right around my birthday. I think it was my birthday. We actually had to do it. And God, what a horrible thing to have to do. I do not. Anybody's had to put down an animal that you've known for a long time is just the worst thing ever. I'm not a crier at all, but it got me. I have to admit, I had some dust in my eye or something that day. That's probably what it was. But anyway, that is a frame of mind I am in when all of it goes down. July 30th, 2023. It's Sunday. I'm laying in bed. It's evening time because, I work nights. So I'm just waking up and the phone rings. I look over and see it's the name of my terminal manager. And, well, I am a union steward, so I have gotten these calls before. But considering what was going on at work and everything, I kind of knew what this was. I did not want to hear it, but I answered the phone and he said, "Hey, Todd, sorry to let you know, but the company has gone out of business. They're closing the gates and it is done." So, then he just went through some of the things, that get stuff out of the truck, some of the final things. We didn't really talk a lot about the situation because honestly, we had talked about it so much in the past. Everybody had been, that it was just kind of like inevitable at that point. We just accepting of it, I guess, is what happened. So, then I'm laying there in bed and I'm dreading telling the evil overlord what had happened. She was worried about this all along. And, I was not quite as much because, well, when I started this job, the drivers that had worked there for like 20 years had said, yeah, they've been saying this company's going out of business forever and they just never have. So I'm not too worried about it. They were really nonchalant about it, whereas some of us newer guys were talking about it more and trying to figure out options for the future if we needed them. We were looking at other jobs and things like that, but I wasn't taking it that seriously. I just wanted some things to have a backup, and turns out I didn't end up at any of those places. But, anyway, I'm not one to just sit around and just la-ti-da, through life and say, it'll be okay. But I was hoping it would be okay. It was not. So anyway, at that point, the company was over. So let's just get on with it. I've dragged this out long enough. The company, of course, was Yellow. Actually, the division I worked for was Holland. So I'm sure many of you have figured that out from things that I've said, that it was a union company, that it was based in Joplin. I didn't talk about doubles and triples a lot, which, Holland didn't have any doubles and triples until Yellow came along and right there at the end, and we started hauling a few of them. But, there were definitely signs if anybody wanted to look into it, and some people did, they guessed correctly. And hey, if you guessed correctly and you emailed me, I told you who it was. Ultimately, I guess it really doesn't matter who I work for. But anyway, as I describe Yellow, as anybody asked me about the job, and I started calling it Yellow towards the end. I know that's what they wanted me to do, even though everybody was insistent to just keep calling it Holland. We were still Holland. But when you're talking about all these bad things that are going on and turmoil, you just kind of shift to the people who were at blame, in our opinion. So we just all started calling it Yellow. So as I was saying, if I was ever talking about this job to anyone, I always described it like this. Yellow is the best job I've ever had working for the crappiest company I've ever worked for. I may have said that in the past, in a past episode. I don't remember, but that is always the way I described it. And you think, how can that be possible? Well, the job was great. I love the pay and the benefits, of course, were great because of the union. The benefits were so awesome that even, we'd go into the dentist office or a doctor's office. I went to the dentist, of course, but I didn't have the doctors very often, but, the evil overlord did. And she would go in there, and even the doctor's offices would say, "Man, this is good insurance." And she'd be like, "Yeah, and we don't pay for it. It's company paid for." And, kind of hard to believe. Really good insurance. That's always one of the best things about a good union job. So we really missed that. Oh, hi, cat. Got some new cats in our life. I'll explain that here in a minute. Yes. So where was I? Old man syndrome. So anyway, unions are typically known as Democrat-run systems, but, and as many of you know, I am a conservative, but I got very lucky in that Joplin had a bunch of conservative guys. We were all Christians, pretty much, most of us, and, we'd talk on the phone late at night and have good conversations, made some really good friends there, and like I say, it was overnight work, which that was one of the kind of bad part of the jobs. But on the other side, you're out there by yourself, and there's less chance for accidents. If you're going to have an accident, it's either because you're falling asleep, which, well, that's always a possibility, but when you work night shift, you just kind of get used to that. And, you can always pull over and get a nap if you need to. And lots of our drivers did that, especially, union guys. They not usually into working too hard. Let's just say that. But, less chance of accidents, less traffic. You can make really good time. And, we were staying in hotels every night, and it was just a great job. I just really loved it. Even better was I had opportunities for the future. What I was doing at the time was line haul. I was over the road, basically. I'd leave out either Sunday or Monday night and come back on Friday night or Saturday morning. It just depended on, the situation. But I'd be gone that whole time, staying in hotels every night, like I said. But that was 6 days a week. And my ultimate goal was to land on a good paying bid. We had some crappier ones that would go up to Kansas City. We'd kick some freight off there, and then we'd load some freight back on and then come back. And that was a really short run. And that's usually where you started out with bids. But then with some plans that they were making, they were going to have some to Oklahoma City, and where's the other place? It was further. I don't remember where. We had Springfield, or not Springfield, St. Louis as well, which was the ideal, typical. It was like the awesome run. And the thing is I was only a few years from that, because the guys who had all those bids were all of retirement age or really close to it. So all I had to do was just hang on for another few years, and I would have had a really sweet paying, home every day gig. But alas, that was not to be had. So the reason I'm talking about all this is because there was really a lot of misconception in the media about who was at fault. I know I talked about this a little bit on the episodes, but I couldn't really get into it that much, because I didn't want to show that I had a lot of insider information. But basically what was happening was Yellow was going under, and they needed to change some things. And this was really the crux of the matter. Yellow came in and wanted to make some sweeping changes, but they were trying to do it without really adjusting the contract. They didn't want to go back in and renegotiate the contract. They wanted to just kind of write this thing called a change of operation and include a lot of things in it. And it was just not flying. It might have gone through if it was all really good things, but it was not. Like I said, I don't think anybody at the company would say that they thought it was run well. Something needed to change, but as I've talked about before, the unions in itself are not really into change that much. They like things to stay the same. The only thing they like is for pay and benefits to go up. But other than that, they don't like to change. For instance, our Yellow drivers were not Yellow, YRC. So let me just explain this real fast. I know I have in the past, but Yellow had some divisions underneath it. They had YRC, they had Holland, New Penn, and Redaway out west. So each one of them kind of did a similar thing, but slightly different. But I should mention, these are, in case you don't know, these are all LTL companies, which is less than truckload. We don't go to a customer and pick up a full load of freight and take it to one customer. We pick up a customer, our customers use us who have maybe one or two pallets of stuff, or they've got something awkwardly shaped, like a long box with 20 pieces of pipe or something like that, that is very awkward, and you wouldn't, want to use a whole truck for it. So the LTL companies load all that stuff onto a truck with other companies' stuff, and then they take it to the nearest destination city, and then they deliver from there. That's the way that works. A lot of money in LTL, a lot of money, both for the drivers and the companies. So it begs to wonder, why was it not working for Yellow? Well, just let me go back a brief history on this. I had a long thing listed out for all the history, but I know nobody cares about the history of Yellow. I just kind of give you the highlights a little bit, and don't take my word on this. I am not a historian. I just kind of looked on Wikipedia and took some things from what I've heard from the drivers and just gone with that. So anyway, Yellow was just Yellow back in the day until they decided to expand and they bought Roadway. A lot of people know about that. That was one of their first big purchases, and they just folded the company all in, and they changed their name to YRC, Yellow Roadway Corporation, I believe. So that's where it all started. Then later on, they decided to buy USF, which included USF Holland, which is, my company, Dugan, Bestway, Glenmore. There was a whole bunch of these scattered all over the United States. And basically what they would do is they would, close a lot of those. The only one they kept open was Holland, and they would fold them into Holland if it was in their region, or they would fold them into these other companies, as just to keep the drivers, and they closed a lot of those terminals. So the idea here was to get really big and become the number one LTL company in the world. And I believe they did accomplish that eventually. But in 2008, I think it was about 2006, 2007, they decided to get bigger. And here's where they got a little bit too big for their britches. They decided to expand into China. So they got into the container industry. So, good idea, I guess. I mean, everything was supposedly, according to Wikipedia, everything was going well with all of the mergers and all of the buyouts and everything. They were doing record revenue, record profits. Everything was looking up, and they just decided to expand out. And, China is a huge market, so I kind of understand why they did it. Problem is, what happened in 2008? The crash. Yeah. Not the crash, the Great Recession. And things went tits up, basically. I mean, it was, everybody knows the situation. You were all alive at the time. It was not pretty. It was bad for companies. And basically at that point, YRC, they were called YRC Worldwide at that point, because they had bought some things, in China interests. It was just way overextended with its debt. And, a lot of that debt was coming due, and they had to do some restructuring. They got some really bad deals, and they just really started going downhill really fast. At that time, they had come to the union and said, listen, we're going under, where this company is going to go broke. We're going to have to close the doors if we don't ask you guys to give back some pay. So they came to the union with a proposition and said, hey, if you give us back 5% of your wages, we will reimburse them all later on. That was the agreement. They were going to reimburse that, and they were going to take 75% of the pension. So, Yellow would pay in a little bit each week, towards the pension, and you would draw that out at the end of your retirement. So they got approval through the federal government to reduce that by 75%. So again, this happened in like 2008, I think it was. I can't remember the exact year, but it was, everybody voted on it because, the company had been really good for most of these drivers. A lot of these drivers had paid off houses, paid off cars. They loved their jobs. They loved all the people that they worked with. It wasn't the best run company. We saw lots of management issues, but they really loved their jobs. So they were like, yeah, I'll take a 5% pay cut. They're going to pay it back. Well, not too long down the road, Yellow came back and said, nope, this isn't working. It's not enough. We're going to have to do 10%. And again, the union agreed to do it. All the union members voted on it and agreed to do it. They liked the company that much. They wanted to keep these jobs, but they came back a third time. And this time the union fought them hard on it, but ultimately there were some shenanigans going on. They took a vote and they wanted 15% now given back. Now, keep in mind, this is, say you made $100,000, which is totally doable as a line haul driver at an LTL company. That's $15,000 pay every year you're giving up. Plus, they're not putting in they're only putting in 25% of the pension. And they don't give you a good, they do have a 401k, but it's not matchable or anything like that. So now you're eating into people's retirement and their bring home pay. And the union members just got tired of it and said, nope, we're not doing it this time. They had a vote. It failed. Somehow or another, they got another vote, only they didn't do it digitally this time. They said something went wrong with that system. We're going to do it in person. And if you don't show up, that counts as a yes vote. Now they did this on purpose. I cannot prove this, of course, but everybody says this because a lot of people don't live right near the union hall where they had to go and vote, that they just didn't show up. And if you don't show up, that's a yes. And that's exactly what happened. It went through after they brought it, to a in-person vote, which seemed very fishy all along. So there's why the union members were so disgruntled. They, the Teamster president, Sean O'Brien, which we voted in recently to get more tough, because honestly, James Hoffer Jr. had negotiated all those deals and everybody thought he was soft. They were like, he would just come to the union and say, they're going to go broke if you don't do this. So you really need to do this. And when I came in on that last vote, they were like, or the last contract that they did, they were like, yeah, you really need to sign this contract or else it's not going to pass. I came in 2019, by the way, so all this had been done for quite a few years, but we had another contract negotiation in 2019. And when I went to the union meeting, first one, they were discussing the contract and they just basically said, hey, you need to vote for this or else the company's going to go under. And I thought, wait a second, I thought the union was supposed to be fighting for us. But according to what James Hoffa Jr. said was that they had done the numbers, they'd looked at all the books, and Yellow was definitely going to go under if we did not sign that contract. So ultimately it did pass. A lot of the older drivers, longtime drivers did not vote for it, but a lot of us knew people were suckered. And, I was getting a 30% raise. That's all I saw. I was getting like 15% immediately. And then I was getting another 15% later on, throughout the course of the 5 years. So to me, it was a no-brainer. But a lot of us were suckered basically. I still don't think that was a huge bad deal, honestly, but it was just another decline in the company. And, we did get some of the wages back, but that's another thing. The reimbursements were never given. All we did, that's 2019 contract, all it did was bring our pay back up to where it was like 13 years ago. That's all it did. And it didn't even reach that pinnacle until the end of the 5-year contract. So by the time I left there, I still was not making what those guys were making back in 2008 or whatever it was. That's how bad it was. ABF was another union company and they were making more than us. UPS drivers were making more than us. And that's part of the argument too. A lot of people came out, especially the union president, when all this was going down. And he said, this is all the union's fault. I've met some drivers who say, yes, it is the union's fault. They make too much money, which that's only an argument you make if you're not making a lot of money. Too much money for a truck driver. Come on. You want to make as much money as you can. But people would say, well, that ran them out of business and those benefits and everything. No, it shouldn't have, because like I said, it's basically the same model as ABF. ABF just got a new contract, record pay, almost 80 cents a mile by the end of it. And, might even be more than that, 81 or 82. Can't remember, but it's a great deal. They're run the same way. They have the exact same insurance as we did. It's just the management of the company. This Yellow managed things so poorly. And this is why they went out of business. Really. Ultimately, the union or the Yellow CEO, Darren Hawkins, Sean O'Brien always called him Do Nothing Darren, which I thought was a little immature, but, I guess part of a negotiating tactics. But anyway, so as I talked about on past episodes, when all these negotiations were going on, Darren Hawkins was always just saying, this is the union's fault. They just need to bend. They just need to give. But the union had given long for 13 years. At one point, Sean O'Brien did some math, or as I'm sure his accountant geeks did, and they said the union members gave up, now pay attention here, 5 to 6 billion with a B dollars over the course of 13 years. And somehow Yellow still can't make it. They can't make it work somehow. ABF didn't get that money. Interesting. Also, something happened. I don't remember what year it was, but somewhere along the line, UPS didn't like what was happening with the pension, and they got out of it, and they bought their way out of it with another $6 billion. Nobody knows where that money went because it certainly didn't go back into our fund, which it was supposed to. So lots of corruption going on. Something's just being really poorly managed. And I know it's poorly managed because I'll just go ahead and tell you this now. I talked to the two of the biggest wigs at Yellow at some point. I wrote them an email, explained one of the things. Let me explain the union. One thing about it is so great is job protection. It's really hard to get fired at a union job. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad. But what it will do is embolden you. You know, if Yellow's saying they got an open door policy, I emailed the CEO and said, listen, your messaging for this change of operation and everything is saying that you're putting the customer first, that we got to get back to that. And he was right about that. Problem is they weren't doing it. YRC had this model of I've never seen anything like it. I couldn't believe it. They basically pick up a customer's freight and they would put it on a truck that's, say they pick it up in Houston and it's going to Sacramento. Okay. They pick it up. They put it on a trailer that's going to Sacramento, but the trailer doesn't move. It doesn't move until it's full, 100% full. That could take weeks. It can sometimes take months. I saw pictures the drivers put on Facebook where they had picked up freight in May and weren't delivering it until September. You cannot run a company like that. By that time, whatever company had ordered that product had bought it and shipped it with somebody else, rebought it. And they didn't want the product. We had, even at the end when things closed, we had stuff sitting on our dock that the companies didn't want because it was not delivered on time. You just can't do that. So anyway, I sent this email to Darren Hawkins explaining, hey, what you're saying is not what you're doing. It's hypocritical. If you want the union guys to get on board, you need to actually follow up on this stuff. Do like Holland used to do before Yellow came in and started screwing with us, is they had a saying, on the floor and out the door. You didn't stack crap all the way to the ceiling. That causes damage. Sure, you can make a lot of money doing that, stacking stuff to the ceiling, but they had a rule: on the floor, out the door. You hit your gate time and you delivered that freight. If you could get it there overnight, the customer had it the next day. Holland was very successful in that model, and they kept us doing that most of the time, but right towards the end, they started messing with us and having us hold trailers and things like that, and it was giving everybody a bad name. Now, I should also point out that I read an article from way back when all these mergers were taking place, and even trucking experts back then were saying, what is going on with Yellow? They're buying all these companies, and now they're competing against each other. And that's exactly what they did. We heard from salespeople that worked at Holland and Yellow, both of them, saying that they were told to go in and undercut the other company. Does that make sense to anyone? You own both companies and you're underselling the other one. You'd think you'd kind of want to go the other way and maybe fudge numbers in your favor, wouldn't you? But instead we're like undercutting. We're like going to the bottom of the board. Like, hey, who can lowball the other guy? Let's just bring in fewer and fewer profits. It made no sense whatsoever. But anyway, so I did not talk to the CEO right away. He did email me and he said, I'm going to set you up with the president of the company, which his name was Daryl. What was his last name? It's been so long. Daryl Harris. That's what his name was. So he called me one Saturday afternoon when I was home shopping with the evil overlord, looking for some shoes, and he calls me, and I was not expecting it, of course, but I ended up talking to him for about an hour on the phone. he is a really cool guy. Got a great head on his shoulders. He came up in the dock. He does not have a college degree. He just rose up through the ranks. I think he worked at FedEx for a while, which is kind of ironic because that's kind of what the model Yellow was going for with this change of operation. They wanted to kind of do the whole thing, basically what Holland was already doing. But we had a long conversation about all the things that were going on. And of course, you could tell he was trying to kind of get me on his side. And I understood his points, but I also just, said, hey, the union guys they don't trust you guys anymore. They stole and stole and stole, and they never gave it back. And now they're wanting us to take another pay cut. And he was like, well, it's not a pay cut. And I was like, oh, you're right. It's not a pay cut. They're not cutting our mileage pay. They're not cutting our hourly pay. What they're doing is cutting our opportunity to make money, because these jobs are going to be like home more often and not on the road as much. They weren't going to have as many overnight runs and stuff like that, which, it's a trade-off. You take less money. So I get it. Honestly, I was willing to do it. I would have worked the dock, which was honestly the biggest sticking point. That is what really crashed the company. They said, you are going to have to work the dock. And Holland guys, I think most of us were like, well, okay, we're already doing it for whatever reason. They already had us doing that. And I asked the Holland guys how that happened. And they were like, I don't know. It just happened. We just started doing it. But the YRC guys, I'm not sure about the Red Away and the New Penn drivers, but the YRC guys did not touch freight. The drivers did not touch freight. It was just part of their DNA. That's part of what they always did. They did not want to touch freight, and they refused to touch freight. And that's really where the drawing line came. So when Darren Hawkins, two DHs there, when Darren Hawkins says that it is the union's fault that the company went under, he is correct. Technically, let's make sure we point that out, because what had happened was at some point, they were going to drop insurance. They were, because the union was not coming to the table. I wish they would have gotten to the table earlier, but they were dealing with the UPS contract at the time too, and couldn't really make it. And, Yellow escalated things and, said, we need you to come to the table. We're going broke. If we don't get this done within a month, we're out of business. And, basically the union decided to strike, and that was the killing blow. As soon as we had already been losing a lot of customers because of the contract negotiation, and things weren't looking good. And at that point, the financiers kind of just drew the line and said, nope, we're not doing this anymore. And that's really the cause of it. So the union saying it was a strike, we're going to strike, and they were planning on it. And I had a call about it like a week before it happened. Maybe it was less than that. They were setting up things where we go in and build, the picket signs and set up schedules and all that stuff. And I was really not looking forward to this, honestly, but I was just hoping the threat of it would get, Yellow to the table and, they could mash something out, because again, I'm going back to what all these guys said, 20 years. Hey, it just keeps going. So that's what I was just hoping it would happen again. Although honestly, it had never gotten this bad before, but alas, it did not happen. That was the end. And it folded right after the strike was announced. It was like a week later. That's when it folded. So technically, like I said, yes, the union caused the crash of the company. They went under because of the union, because the union didn't want to change and didn't want to agree. But the real reason is because the company was so poorly managed. And this is where I was going when I talked with Daryl Harris. He told me at one point in the conversation, this is not a direct quote, but it's as close as I can get to it. He said, Todd, he goes, I don't have a college degree, but I see all the assets we have at this company. I see all the buildings, all the good drivers. I see what our business looks like. You'd think we would be able to make money, wouldn't you? And even, he asked if I had a college degree, and I said, no, just an associate's, but nothing to do with trucking. He goes, yeah. If you're halfway smart, it seems like you could make this work. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, but it's not working. I go, no, it's not. And he was like, that's because YRC has a broken business model. These are his words. This is why he was brought in, because the YRC business model was broken. You cannot treat customers like that. You can't pick up freight, say customers are your number one priority, and then deliver it a month later. You can't deliver it 2 weeks later. You gotta get it there. So his plan was to have that option for what they were planning on doing with this change of operation was saying, okay, if you want something overnight, we'll ship it with Holland or New Pen or Redaway. If it's within our running area, we'll get it there overnight, fast and furious. That was the whole idea. Pick up the drivers, local drivers, pick up the load. They put it on a trailer. I would take it to, say, Kansas City or St. Louis. I would move some freight around on the dock, pick up trailers that were coming back to Joplin from the other place. I would bring it back. The city guys would deliver it the next day. That's the whole idea of it. So, I'm not just taking a trailer to St. Louis and it's sitting there until the morning guys get to it and then they don't get to it in time and it's a 2-day freight. So they wanted to have that option. They wanted to charge a premium for it, which is what Holland always did in the first place. They were really, I can't say this with impunity. Like, I don't know for sure, but it really seemed like they were trying to follow the Holland rules. And the problem is, and even in the change of operation, most of the rules that they were going with were Holland rules. And YRC did not like that. I don't know about Redaway, New Pen. They were too far out of my region. I never talked to those guys, but the YRC guys hated it. They didn't want any part of it. And now they don't have a part of it. Matter of fact, I met a YRC guy after, he'd been working there for like 40 years. And I met him at the job I'm at now at our orientation. And, I said, so how do you feel about it now? Are you willing to work the dock a little bit? He just walked off. He was so mad at me. But I mean, it was a good point. If he'd have just bent a little bit, but he did not want to, get out on the dock, which, hey, I understand getting out on the dock when it's, 2 degrees outside is not fun. It's not, but it's a job. I don't care what the job is as long as you pay me well. I'd work on a factory line if it would pay what it did right now, but anyway, sometimes the lack of change will kill you, but I think, the yellow guys, or the YRC guys, I should say, they were looking at ABF and they're like, well, ABF still doesn't touch freight. Why should they, why should we have to? It's the same type of job, but things change. So like I said, they were planning on doing the overnight freight, through the smaller regional companies. And then Yellow was going to take what they called like a budget freight. They were just going to say, hey, we'll pick this up when we get a truck full, we'll ship it and we'll get it there. So if it was nothing really pressing, that would be the way to go. Save yourself some money. But if you need it there overnight, you'll pay a premium and they'll put it on Holland or Redaway or New Pen. I honestly think the plan would have worked. I really do. I told lots of my fellow union members, I thought their plan was solid. It was, well, turns out it wasn't really working that well for FedEx because they did end up laying off a lot of drivers. But I think what they were planning was better than what we were doing, which honestly, they just kept sinking money and losing money. So something had to change, and I was willing to give it a try. Many were not. And there has been a lot of blame from Yellow and union members themselves because on Sean O'Brien, who's the new president. He was brought in because the union members were tired of James Hoffa's crap. They were like, he's just a company man. He just tells us to vote for whatever Yellow wants. And, that's what we did all these years and we never got that money back. And they were frustrated with him. So they were like, we're going to bring in this bulldog, Sean O'Brien. He's vowed to be militant and fight, every step of the way and not take any crap. And that's what the union members wanted. And that's what they got, because that's exactly what he did. So I don't know why people are, well, I do know why people are mad at him. Union members are mad at him because they lost their job. But all he was doing was asking them, what do you want me to do? And they were like, fight. We're tired of giving back money to Yellow and they're just wasting it and they're not successful. And this was even after the $700 million loan from the government that was very questionable. By the way, the bankruptcy, they've already paid that back. We are all still waiting to get paid. It's a year and a half later, and we're still waiting to get paid for our vacation and our sick pay. I'm pretty sure the sick pay and vacation is coming for sure, but they also some WARN Act stuff, WARN, which states that, if a company's going out of business, they have to give employees a 60-day notice, which they did not. So that's been in the courts. If that is going to happen, if that comes through, a lot of drivers are going to get, like me, I think I figured up I'd get like an extra $16,000 or something. Because basically what it is what your pay is over the course of 60 days. So that's, they had us all figure that up and file on it. We have not heard on that. Supposedly they say the vacation and sick pay is going to be paid out in the first or second quarter of 2025. Not that that matters to you, but it matters to me because that's a paycheck. I'll take it. I don't expect to get the Warren stuff, but if I do, wow, that would be awesome. But, it's kind of like, just don't get too optimistic about that because it probably ain't going to happen. But anyway, I think that's really about all I had to say about the situation. I just wanted to kind of clear things up because, the union got a really bad rap, Teamsters in specific on this, because like I said, Yellow just kept harping that this was all the union's fault. If the union was just willing to bend, then everything would go through and they'd just be the most successful one Yellow company in the world. Well, they weren't proving to do that. Even when they were trying to implement this one Yellow stuff, they were still doing the crap of holding on to freight, and they were starting to do it with like Holland. So I had to think they're probably doing it with Redaway and New Pin as well. That's the YRC model that the president of the company told me that it didn't work. It was failing. So why are they implementing? Of course, I found out later, the reason why they're doing it is something called yields. They were able to tell the stockbrokers, or not stockbrokers, stockholders. They were able to say, hey, listen, look at how well we're doing. And their numbers were looking pretty good for a while, but it was all a numbers game because they're saying, look at how much freight we're moving with so little equipment. It's the yield. We're putting this much freight per trailer. We're making this much money. Look at this. It's awesome. But what they weren't saying is if they just shipped it overnight, we still made that money. It wouldn't have been quite as much because, more fuel and all that stuff involved with it and more hours for the driver to drive, but we would have had happy customers, which did not exist at Yellow towards the end. Most of the customers were just there because it was the cheapest option, honestly. Many of them had long histories and didn't really want to leave. We actually had salespeople tell us that, Holland would go in and say, hey, we're all Yellow now. And they're like, we're not shipping anything with the name Yellow on it. We're not putting anything in a truck that has the name Yellow on it. It's like, wow. Well, of course, if you get burned like that, if you ship freight and then you never get it, or you get it months later after you've already reordered it through somebody else, then why would you? This was just really bad, poor management. And I talked to Darren Hawkins on the phone as well. Now, his conversation, I honestly didn't enjoy. I loved the conversation with Daryl Harris. He was down to earth. He was smart. He was quick. He was funny. I, kind of hoping he was going to take over eventually, but, Darren Hawkins was the big man and he talked a lot of corporate blah, 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 synergies and blah, blah, blah. And, trying to tell me how great it was going to be, with the new system and, the new one Yellow, and how if we all would just got on board, he's positive. He's 100% positive. They're going to reach a negotiation. They're going to reach an agreement, which they didn't. He was just full of smoke, honestly. But, and honestly, I don't know why they named him CEO in the first place of Yellow, because he was the one in charge of YRC. He was the CEO of YRC division the whole time it was going down. Well, not the whole time. He wasn't there. He was only there like the last 5 years, but they kept losing money. They were starting to get a little bit better, but I don't know that he was the right choice for the CEO job. But, hey, regardless, after the fact, good thing is he's already got another job. And rumor has it, they had like a bunch of top management at Yellow that were still like a year after they closed the door, is still making like $235,000 a month, for their salaries, because they had salaries that they had to fulfill. Okay. What are they doing that whole time? Selling equipment? Okay, whatever. You see where our money went. That's why I don't expect to get any Warren money. Even if they say that they broke, the government says that they broke the law, then it probably ain't going to matter because there probably ain't going to be any money left over. So anyway, I just wanted to straighten the record there. Again, this is just my opinion, but I really do not think it is the fault of the Teamsters that Yellow went under. It is the fault of Yellow for being poor managers. Could the Teamsters have changed a little bit and possibly kept this thing afloat and maybe turned it around? Maybe. But 13 years, guys. 13 years. Okay? Let's do some quick math. Let's use that example. I have $100,000 a year for a line haul driver. The city drivers would typically make less, but a line haul driver could make $100,000 pretty easy if they just worked. So figure that, and the 15% you had lost over the course of 15 years or 13 years, I believe it was. 15% of $100,000, $15,000. Times that by 13 years. That's $195,000. And most drivers, a lot of drivers made well over 100,000. So you're looking at right around $200,000 of money that you're out, over the course of the 13 years. And that is not even counting the 75% loss of your pension. Again, the company was still paying only 25% into the pension. So, some of these guys are, when they retire, they're only going to get basically a quarter of what they were promised. So you can see why the union stand up, why they finally got tired of it, and why they finally booted out Hoffa and got O'Brien. Of course, like I said, now they're pissed at O'Brien, but it kind of makes you think, and I've talked to some union members about this. Was Hoffa lying? Was he a company man? Or was he just seeing reality? He saw the numbers. He saw they were going to go under. And guess what? As soon as O'Brien came in, he said the numbers were bad too. But the union members wanted him to stand up to him and say no. And he did. And the company went under. So maybe Hoffa wasn't such a stinker after all. Maybe. I don't know. I'm sure with the name of Hoffa, he probably had some, corruption and stuff going on. I mean, Yellow did have ties with the mob the whole time. So, or not Yellow, the Teamsters, they had ties with the mob. So, yeah. Anyway, I guess it's not surprising after almost 100 years that the company went under. I'm very sad. Like I said, I really was looking forward to having that job for the rest of my life. I wanted to be home every day, and I do have a new job now, but I do not really have that option. Well, I do, but I'd take a pretty big pay cut and I'd have to move, and I really don't want to do that. So with that being said, I just wanted to let you know that it's not all the union's fault. It's not entirely Yellow's fault, but it is mostly Yellow's fault. I mean, when you go under, it's bad management typically. Like I said, anybody who says that it's totally the Teamsters' fault, just point them to UPS and ABF. Both of those companies are thriving. Profits are way up. Drivers are happy. Everything's good. They got great benefits. It's the management of Yellow. That's really what it comes down to. So with that, I guess I would leave this. I did not expect this to go on for this long, but it did. Maybe it was a bit rambling, but I thought about structuring a little bit more, and then I thought, nah, I'm just going to wing it. Who cares? Closing out the podcast anyway. I got the information across. There's going to be 2 more episodes. Episode 199, I'm going to reveal the company I work for now and explain to you all about them. And in episode 200, I will basically just close it out, get on here and talk about the podcast a little bit and give my thanks. So with that, I guess we will just get out of here. Oh yeah, but before we do, I mentioned a cat crawling around earlier. We started with cats. Let's end with cats. Yeah. As I said, Hammy passed away in August of 2023. And there for quite a while, we were just completely content in not having a cat. It's just too hard to, we love cats, but it's just too hard to have another animal in the house. Honestly, the evil overlord was overwhelmed with all of the caretaking and everything that it took, and she just wanted a break. Just, But I always told anybody who asks, I know the first cat to come along, She's going to latch onto it. She's going to like its little personality because she can find something awesome in every cat, even the stubborn ones like Hammy. So eventually, this was probably, I don't know, 9 months, well, probably about a year later. We had some friends of the family who were discovered to have cats in their apartment, and they were not supposed to have cats. So they were looking for another place, and they needed a place for these cats to stay. There was 2 of them. And, the evil overlord was like, well, they can stay with me for a little while, no big deal. And just get them when you get another house. Well, obviously, they never got another house. They just gave up the cats, and they probably knew they were giving them to a crazy old cat lady. And once she got attached, I don't know that was their motive. I don't think it was their motive. I think they probably missed their cats. But at some point, when you have cats and you get attached to them, the evil overlord was like, I'm going to tell them that they either need to come and take them now, or they're not getting them at all. Because, you don't want to get too attached. Well, she's attached. And now we have 2 cats. They are both pains in the butt, honestly. Actually, the little girl, Junie, we didn't name these cats, by the way. They were already named. But Junie is a little gray and white mix, and she's just as sweet as can be. Well, she's kind of stubborn, like most women, honestly. But, like you can't tell her no. She'll just do it anyway. But in general, she doesn't get into a lot of crap. She's really clean. She takes care of herself. She's very quiet. She's very prissy. She loves to lay in laps, even mine every now and then if the evil overlord is not available. Briggs, on the other hand, is the male. God, what a pain in the butt that cat is. Totally gray. Big cat. He is very loving, which is a change of pace for us from Hammy, but he is super loving, but he is very needy. He always wants to love, and he always wants to be near you. He follows her around the house all the time. If she's not there, sometimes he'll follow me. He's very demanding with his food. He gets up in your face if he's not getting what he wants. He'll get up on your end tables, knock crap off, and wake you up. He'll chew on papers in the room to wake you up. He's kind of a handful, honestly, but he's very lovable. And, the 2 are a package, old Briggs and Junie, and there's just there ain't no way the evil overlord was going to have them separated, which, if she was going to get rid of one, we know which one she would get rid of, but that's not going to happen. So we now have 2 cats, and honestly, I'm a little surprised. They started to bother me a little bit. They were crawling around on my computer while I was starting to record, but they seem to both settle down in here now. Oh, wow. So anyway, that is the story of the cats. We do have cats again. We love cats. They're awesome. Dogs, they're okay, but I like the idea of a dog more than I like having a dog. I don't want to have to take it out. I'd rather clean a crapper box than take it out in the middle of the winter and let it, stand out there and pick up its poop off the ground. No, thank you. So all you dog owners who say you don't, I don't want to clean up a cat box. Well, you're reaching your hand down into dog poop on the ground and picking it up with a plastic bag. So, who's better off there? Just saying. So anyway, with that, let's finish this sucker out. All right, with the podcast coming to a close, I don't really see any point in giving a lot of information out here about contacting the show and comments and everything, but if you do have some comments about what was said in this episode, please give me a shout. truckerdump@gmail.com. I may or may not read it on the next episode, but I might in the last episode. But anyway, don't forget the free ebooks are out there and the free audiobook. All you have to do is email me, truckerdump@gmail.com. I've had a couple of people take me up on that. Surprised not more, honestly, but hey, whatever. It is what it is. So I guess until next time, drive safe, stay out of my way.